everyone. I'm Debbie Stokes of Three Women Voices. Imagine you were diagnosed with a brain tumor in the prime of your life. Well, meet my special guest, Allison Jones. It happened to her. She is the wife of a professional basketball player, and her life was altered when she heard the news she needed brain surgery. She was devastated, but she chose to fight her way through it. This is her story. Allison, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, and I want to thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. So let's jump right in. So, why don't you start off with telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
All right. Well, you did a great job kind of giving a little bit of introduction to me and my story. I'm Allison, obviously. I am 29 years old and I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. Atlanta is home, but my husband does play professional basketball, and so we've lived kind of all over the place in a couple of different U.S. cities and a few different countries. I'm a new mom. My daughter Harper was born this past July, so you know,
Congratulations.
thank you. So getting used to mom life. I also am a blogger and I guess influencer is what other people refer to me as. I have a pretty big following on social media, and I love to share just kind of about my personal experiences as a mom, as a wife, as someone who lives overseas, and also I love to share about my experience with my brain surgery, because I do think it's important to inspire other people. Just never let anything hold you back.
Yes, yes, and that's a good thing. So, who's the lucky basketball player that you're married to?
My husband's name is Daquan Jones. We have been together for, let's see, 12 years. Together for 12
Wow.
years, married for
Okay.
going on 6 years. We are college sweethearts, and yeah, the rest is kind of history. I met him right before my freshman year of college at the University of Miami. We both attended the University of Miami, and I haven't been able to get rid of him since.
All right. So, let's jump right into what was it like when you first heard the words that you have a brain tumor?
It was kind of surreal. Everything happened very quickly and very suddenly for me. I started out just having really bad headaches. I guess we would call them migraine headaches. This was right after I came off of birth control, so trying to conceive. And so I honestly thought that the headaches were just tied to hormones. Women, we go through all types of different hormonal changes. My mom has migraines. I was like, okay, it's probably a mix of hormones and genetics at this point. Didn't think too much of it, but I did decide to just go see my doctor, only because I just wanted some relief from the headaches. And so my doctor was like, yeah, these really just sound like normal migraines, but let's just order you an MRI, just to be conservative. And honestly, I put off getting the MRI. My husband and I had a trip planned to the Bahamas, and I was like, I'm gonna do that when I get back. Like, I wasn't even very worried about it, but I did get the MRI. And like, while I was still in the technician's office, she kind of pulled my husband and I to the side, and she was like, "Hey, I want to show you something." And technicians are not supposed to do that. They're not supposed to
Yeah.
show you your scans. They're supposed to wait for your doctor to call you. But she was like, I'm not supposed to do this, but you guys just give out such great energy. Like, I couldn't just let you leave without showing you. I just want to show you your scan. So she let me take a look at it, and she was like, "You see that right there? Like, that's abnormal." She was like, "So, your doctor will be calling you today, but like, if you want, like, go ahead and call your doctor now, because I'm gonna send these over right now. So, your doctor will have them." And so I went ahead and, called my mom and let her know, like, "Hey mom, like, my scan came back a little bit abnormal," because my husband at this point is like freaking out. And so I honestly needed my mom to come and meet us to help me kind of support him. I'm a realist. And so I'm kind of like, you tell me what's going on, let me find a solution, we'll go from there. So at that point, I didn't really have a lot of information. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to freak out, until there's something to freak out about. But later that day, my doctor did call me. She told me that it was a brain tumor, told me what type of brain tumor she predicted that it was, and suggested that I see a specialist later in the week. And I think my initial reaction was definitely shock, because I really didn't think that anything was going to be wrong. Like I said, I put off getting the scan in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So initial reaction, definitely a little bit of shock. And, you know, like I said, I'm a realist. So I immediately just jumped to like, boom, okay, like what do we need to do? You know, what's the answer here?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so how did you find what you needed to fight through it? Like once you found out, okay, this is what it is, now what's next? How did you fight through it?
I think how I fought through it is I went into problem solving mode. I was like, how soon can I get in with the specialist? You know, kind of doing some research on what typically happens to people who have the type of tumor that my doctor said that she predicted that I had, and you know, what needs to be done. Like I said, I am definitely a realist and definitely someone who likes to try to solve issues. And so I think how I got through that part of it was I was in problem solving mode 100%. And I was like, there's no reason to be afraid. We just need to figure out, you know, what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm. Good attitude.
Yeah.
Well, people would think like that when they find out about an illness.
Exactly.
Yes.
There had to be some sort of answer. I was like,
yes.
Someone just tell me what it is.
Yeah. So now, once you went through the process, had the brain tumor, what was your life like after that?
So literally I found
after the surgery.
I found out that I had a tumor on Monday, and on Thursday I was on an operating table.
So that was fast. Yeah.
There was I didn't really have like life with a tumor because I found out I had it and then it was gone. And so I had my brain surgery. I was in the hospital for, I think, until Sunday. So just 3 or 4 days in the hospital. And then, you know, I was at home, and I definitely leaned in on my faith. I am a God girl 100%. And so you know, my prayer life increased, and I leaned on God because I really felt like, you know, that wasn't the end for me, and that God had seen me through the surgery, and so that God would see me through the recovery as well. So I leaned on my faith a lot. And I also started just making self-care like a huge priority. I started doing whatever it took to protect my peace. You know, that meant eliminating activities, eliminating some people, but my peace became my number one priority as I recovered from surgery. It took me probably it was like an 8 to 12 week recovery, you know, just the initial recovery. But then it took me about another month or two to like feel like myself again, because it's a pretty big surgery. Obviously, someone's cutting into your skull. So
exactly, yes.
Yeah, and so during that whole time, I would say God and self-care. That's definitely like what got me through and what I leaned on.
So now, with self-care, what were some of the things that you did, and then what would you say to other women about how they can practice self-care in their own life?
So I think the first part of self-care is definitely protecting your peace. And so for me, that meant that there were some relationships that I had pre-brain tumor that I didn't carry on post-brain tumor. So if there are people in your life that don't serve you, that you feel the relationship is one-sided, you know, you're constantly putting in, not getting anything out, my number one advice would be that it might be time to let those things go. Similarly, if there's activities that you're doing that don't serve you, I've dealt with anxiety on and off throughout my life, and I started paying attention to the activities that spark my anxiety. Like for me, one thing is watching the news. I don't watch the news anymore. I get all my news. If something big is going on, then someone's going to call me and let me know. You know?
Yeah. Okay.
But I refuse to watch the news. And so I would say, you know, look for activities that just don't make you feel good and get rid of them. The other thing that was really huge for me during my recovery, during self-care, was aromatherapy. I just found that different scents just could uplift me, could change my mood. That's one thing that I leaned heavily on, and I'd recommend finding that thing for you. You know, some people like bubble baths, some people like taking walks. For me, it was aromatherapy, and then when I was able to, working out. That's a big self-care tip. You really have to just find what works for you, but definitely prioritize it. That's one thing that my experience taught me, is that just like we put other things like, you know, meetings with friends and things that we have to do for work on our calendar, it's okay. Put your self-care activities on your calendar as well.
Okay, good advice. So now, what do you think inspires you to have the resilience to fight past obstacles?
Well, okay. I think it's two-part. First of all, I think it's my faith in God. Honestly, I just feel like we should never put a period where God puts a comma, right? And that's a quote that I live by. You know, there's so many times in our lives where we try to put a comma, but God is not finished with us, not finished with our stories. So that's one thing. And then the second thing, as a mom, I think, of course, my daughter. I didn't have my daughter when I went through this whole, my whole brain surgery experience, but now she definitely is an inspiration for me every day just to keep going and to try to be at my best.
Okay. So now what advice could you give to women about finding that fight within them to fight past an illness or obstacles?
Yeah, I think that you have to find your why. If you're a God girl, then, let your faith in God be your why. If you're not, there still is a why for you, whether it's your family, whether it's your goals. You just have to search high and low and find your why and not give up on it.
Okay. So now I understand that you suffer with chronic anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
What is that like? Tell us about that and what it's like.
Well, okay, my anxiety has gotten, honestly, a lot better. But when it was at its peak was years ago, honestly, before my brain surgery. I laugh and say that my brain tumor kind of cured my anxiety because it gave me just a new perspective on life. But I do have an anxious personality by nature. And so in my early 20s, especially, I definitely struggled with it. And for me, it just feels like being keyed up and having a ton of worry, usually about things that you can't control. And honestly, how I coped with that was therapy. My background is in mental health, and so I'm a huge proponent of therapy. And so I think that we should all have a therapist on call. You never know when you might need somebody. So therapy, and then again, I have to go back to faith. My faith in God really helped me to personally get through the period where my anxiety was the worst.
Okay. So now how important is spiritual, emotional, and mental health to a person's health and healing?
It's the most important. I mean, I honestly think that health is so multidimensional, and I think that your emotional health and your spiritual health is gonna impact your physical. And so I know for me, like especially during the recovery from my brain surgery, I had to think of it all as one thing, because if one part of it was off, then I noticed that the rest of it was off as well. So I think that honestly, when you're investing in your health, working out is great, eating a good diet is great, but you also have to pray and journal and do things for your mental health and all of that stuff, because it all definitely works together.
Okay. So now you're married to a professional basketball player, and I'm sure you find yourself home alone sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
How is that? And then what would you say to women who are married to businessmen or people or men that work a lot and are not home so much?
Yeah. Not only do I find myself home alone a lot, but I find myself home alone in other countries a lot. So it's a little different.
Wow.
For us. Usually, like this past season, my husband played in Italy, and there would be, days where he would be gone for a couple days at a time, and it's just my daughter and I, in our apartment in Italy. So it's definitely an adjustment. You have to find something to keep you busy. So much of our lives when we're married to men who have these kind of larger than life careers, so much of our lives revolve around them and their careers. But you have to find something for yourself outside of your husband. For me, that has been like blogging and social media and working with brands. And also I have a candle company that I started shortly after my surgery. So that, those are the things that I usually do to just to kind of keep myself busy. And I think it's really important that we as women, we have something for ourselves that's outside of our marriage.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So now is your husband supportive of what you do?
100%. 100%. Okay. My husband is very, very supportive, and he pushes me to take, the things that I do to the next level. And invest in me and definitely, he's my photographer. He's definitely very supportive.
Okay. So now, how important would you tell everyone that family and faith is to when you're going through things and just to be a unit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that family and faith are extremely important. I can't imagine getting through, my experience that I shared about, or just other day-to-day experiences without my faith in God and without the support of my husband and my mom and, my immediate family. I think that family is honestly should be the backbone in everything that we do, and God should be at the center, of our family. So I think that family and faith are honestly everything.
And speaking about family, you have a podcast with your mom. Tell us about
Yeah. So my mom and I started our podcast. It's called the Duo Podcast. We started it a few years ago. We've actually kind of been on a prolonged hiatus for a while because life just got super hectic. Like it was literally like back to back, like surgery, baby, But our whole aim is to share about the generational differences between mothers and daughters and how we can still have close relationships in spite of those generational differences. My mom has always been my absolute best friend. And so on our podcast, we talk about literally anything and everything under the sun. And actually, we're going to be coming back with our podcast later this summer. We had planned to relaunch our podcast kind of before this whole COVID-19 thing happened. And so we kind of are, again, at a little bit of a standstill, just waiting for this to pass. But we're going to be back with a relaunch really soon. So I'm really excited about that.
Okay, that sounds good. So now, what is it like working with family and then when you have a disagreement?
Well, I can't really so much speak on that because I don't really consider what me and my mom do with our podcast work. It's kind of just, a labor of love. And so I can't really consider it work. And so we haven't really had to go through, those growing pains of working with family. And honestly, she pretty much gives me creative control over it all. I'm the creative. She just kind of comes in and does what I tell her to do and, has the conversations with me. And so we haven't really had any disagreements thus far.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, now growth is important in life. And you say never settle for a life that is less than what you're capable of living.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that?
Basically, I mean that we should never settle and that we should always be on a mission to be the best us that we can be. I always say that I'm on a journey towards physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. And I think that's a lifelong journey and that we should never settle for less. Never stop trying to be your best.
Okay. Now, outside of your mom, who inspires you?
Let's see. Who inspires me outside of my mom? I think my daughter has, like I said, been a great inspiration to me. Just like her life and her presence has inspired me to definitely push, definitely try to be my best. My husband has been a great inspiration to me, despite the odds. He's made it so much further than a lot of people thought he would. He's one of those people that was counted out so many times and has continued to break barriers and to just excel. So I think that he would be another one of my big inspirations.
Okay, so this is the last question. Can you give some words of advice or encouragement or empowerment to women to help them in their lives?
I would say to all the women out there, just, don't sell yourself short. I think a lot of times we fall into being wives and we fall into being moms and we kind of let go of the dreams and aspirations that we had before those things happen. But we're the only ones that are telling ourselves that we can't do it all, right? Like no one else is telling us that. So don't sell yourself short and don't, like I said, put a period where God is putting a comma. Like we are so much more than we give ourselves credit for.
Okay. Thank you, Allison.
Of course.
To reach out to you, how can they reach you?
I'm very active on Instagram, so I would definitely recommend reaching out to me via Instagram. My Instagram name is at Allison, Allison Mathis Jones. I'm also on Facebook. My personal Facebook page is at capacity, so don't friend me there because I literally just can't accept any more people. Like, there's literally a number of people that Facebook says, okay, no more. But I do have a Facebook page, and that is at by Allison Mathis Jones, and that is open, and I'm pretty active on there as well.
Okay. All right. So like I said, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to interview you. And I want to say thank you for watching. If you wanted to reach out to Three Women Voices, you can reach us at threewomenvoices.com. Our email address is threewomenvoices@gmail.com. We're on Instagram at 3_women voices. And our Facebook is the number 3 Women Voices. And I thank you for watching.